everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Wise Fool. It's so great to have you here. This is Miki, and today I will be telling the story of Mallie and the Trow. Mallie and her husband Robbie lived in a small croft in Shetland with their 4 young children. Robbie was a sailor who would work on ships for a few months in the summer, but return home for the winter, bringing with him enough money to live on. They would buy enough barley flour to fill the meal gurnal, a wooden chest used for storing flour, and a barrel of pickled herrings to see them through the cold winter months. But one year, Robbie never returned to Mallie and the children, and it was feared that he had been lost in a shipwreck or through disease on board his ship. Nobody knew, but Robbie never returned home again. Mallie had 4 hungry children to feed, and no money coming in. She got bits of jobs here and there, making dresses and repairing clothes, but it was scarcely enough to put food on the table, and her children were crying with hunger. She could bear it no longer, and, swallowing her pride, she took a staff in her hand, and put a straw basket, called a kishie, on her back, and set off with their 4 children to beg for food. They went to an old woman who lived up the hill, and who was known to have plenty of food and drink for herself. Mallie knocked on the door, which the old woman opened, and peered suspiciously outside. "Who's there?" demanded the old woman. "It's me, Mallie, and my 4 children. We are hungry. We have no food. Would you be kind enough to spare a mouthful of something for us, as without it, I don't know what will happen to us." The woman's face twisted into a look of horror, and she replied, "I'm an old woman, and I have no food to spare for the likes of you." Then she slammed the door in Mallie's face. As they walked back down the hill, the oldest boy's blood boiled with rage. "Did you see that, mother?" he shouted. "Did you see what was in that old woman's cupboard? It was full of bread, cheese, butter, meat, puddings, and all sorts of food, far more than she could ever eat, and yet she wouldn't give us so much as a crumb. How could she do that to us?" "Well, son," said Mallie calmly, "that is just her way. Some people share, and others do not. But remember this, son, we are better than that, for while we may have nothing, we will always share what we have." And they walked home sadly to their empty house. The youngest children were crying with hunger, so Mallie tucked them up in their warm bed to sleep. At least sleep would make them forget their misery. Mallie made up the fire and returned to her sewing. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. "It is so late at night. Who could be calling at this hour?" wondered Mallie as she opened the door. There stood a tiny man dressed in grey, and with a grey hat on his head. His whiskers bristled, and his dark eyes sparkled with mischief, and Mallie knew that this must be a hill trow, as the fairy folk are called in Shetland. "I am an old man in need of food and shelter," said the trow. "Can I come in?" "I'm sorry, old man," said Mallie, "but I'm afraid that you picked the wrong house, for I have no food to give you. Maybe you could try another house?" "I'm an old man," said the trow, "and I'm very tired from walking. I'll take my chances here." Come in," said Mallie, "and take a seat by the fire to warm yourself." She put more peats in the fire and made the trow comfortable. He looked around the tiny house and saw the 4 children peering bleary-eyed at him from the foot of the bed. "Come on, woman," said the trow, "you must have something to eat in the house." "Well, I'll try," said Mallie. She went over to the empty meal gurnal, and she took a knife and scraped the sides of it to remove any flour dust still sticking to it. She gathered together a small pile of flour, dust, cobwebs, and wood shavings, and she carefully gathered them up in a cup. She took this over to the empty barrel that had contained the brine that the herring had been pickled in, and she poured a small amount of the pickle onto the flour and dust, and she mixed it into a paste before carefully dividing it into 6 equal parts, 1 for the trow, 1 for each of her 4 children, and 1 for herself. The trow stared at this disgusting substance, more like a wallpaper paste than food, and he said, "Is this all you have?" "Yes," said Mallie sadly. "This is the only food in this house, and tomorrow we won't even have this much to eat." The trow scratched his head, and then he cheered up a bit, saying, "Ah, but you'll have a fine drop of home-brewed ale to wash this stuff down with." "No, I'm sorry," said Mallie. "I have no barley for malt to make ale, but there is good sweet water from the well." "Oh, no thank you," said the trow. "I never touched the stuff." "I told you that you had picked the wrong house," said Mallie. "But at least you will be warm tonight, as I have plenty of peats to burn. So don't be cold." With that she retired to bed with the children, and left the Trow sitting in the chair by the fire. The next morning, the Trow said his goodbyes and headed for the door. He stopped and turned to Mallie and said, "Was that truly all the food you had in the house? That stuff you gave me, was that all you had?" "Truly it was," said Mallie. "Well then," said the Trow, "it takes a very special kind of person to share the last food they have in the whole world with a total stranger. You have my blessings." And with that, the Trow left Mallie's house and disappeared from view. "Well, my boy," said Mallie to her oldest son, "we may be starving, but we may as well be comfortable while we starve. Go and bring in some peat so that we can be warm." The boy brought in a kishie full of peats and set it by the fire. Mallie picked up a large peat and broke it in two so that it would burn easily, and as she did, she heard a ching on the floor. She looked down, and there was a gold coin lying shining by her hearth. She broke another peat, and ching! Another gold coin fell out of it. She broke another, and another peat, and every single one had a gold coin inside of it. Mallie realized that this was the blessing that the Trow had mentioned, and she gathered up all the money and said to her oldest son, "Run into town and buy bread, and cheese, and butter, oh, and some ham, and some tea, oh, and strawberry jam. Do you remember jam? Run!" And away the boy ran to buy food. Mallie and her 4 children ate like royalty, and every peat that they broke had a gold coin in it. Now word spread that Mallie had come into money. She had been as poor as a church mouse, but now she had plenty of money. The old woman who lived up the hill grew jealous, muttering to herself, "A beggar woman, living like a queen. Who ever heard of such a thing? I'll find out her secret. Why should she have all the money? Why shouldn't I, a poor old woman, share in this good fortune too?" That night the old woman sneaked silently down the hill, and she spied on Mallie. As she peered through the window, she saw Mallie break open a peat, and a gold coin fall into the floor. "So that's her game, is it?" muttered the old woman, and she crept back up the hill to wait until they were asleep. When she saw that the house was in darkness, she crept back down the hill with a kishie on her back and stole Mallie's peats. All night she carted peats from Mallie's peat stack back to her own house, where she piled them by the fire. When dawn broke, the old woman was ready to receive her reward. She took hold of a good big peat and she broke it in two. But instead of it containing a gold coin, a live mouse fell on the floor and scuttled away into a corner. Replied the old woman, "it must have been a dud. I'll try again." She broke another peat, and another live mouse fell to the floor, and then another mouse, and another mouse, until she had broken all the peats that she had stolen. She had not got one gold coin, but she did have a lot of mice. The mice gathered together in the corner and had a conference. "Well," said the head mouse, "I don't know about you lot, but I'm hungry. What's to eat in this house?" And with that they ran to the old woman's cupboard that was full of food. They ate her bread and her cheese, her butter and her meat, and all the puddings. They nibbled holes in her clothes, her curtains, her furniture. They literally ate her out of house and home until she had nothing. The old woman was left with nothing, and she was forced to take her staff in her hand and a kishie on her back, which was patched with dried grass as the mice had nibbled holes in it, and she set off to Mallie's house to beg. When the knock came to Mallie's door, her oldest boy answered it. There stood the old woman, her clothes full of holes, and a sheepish look on her face. "Please, pity a poor, hungry old lady," she begged. "My house has been overrun with mice, and they have eaten all of my food, and nibbled all my things. There is nothing left, and I am hungry." The boy stared at the old woman, and the rage he had felt before when she refused them food rose in his chest. He stared into her eyes and said in a cold voice, "Old woman, I will give you exactly what you gave us when we were starving, nothing." And with that he slammed the door in the old woman's face. Mallie had been watching this, and she stepped forward, shaking her head and saying, "No, son, I told you, we are better than that. We share." Mallie opened the door and called to the old woman, "Old woman, come back. Here, take as much food as you want. And remember this, as long as I am living, you will never have to go hungry."